I'm still baffled as to how you can be a congressional figure or a Senate figure, and you may have entered the nation's capital with debt. But now when you look at your financial portfolio, it might be worth millions. What's going on there?
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. So in this clip, we're going to watch Stephen A. Smith completely go off on the Democrats. But most importantly, he's going to present himself as a more reasonable candidate for the next Democrat nominee for president. Absolutely hilarious. Let's not waste any time and get straight into this video.
That I didn't mean what I said, but I do. And I think the time has arrived to let you all know. This is not something that I planned, contrary to people bloviating out there on their podcasts and stuff like that. I'm no political aficionado. There's so much that I have to learn about the intricacies of politics and all that it entails, particularly as it pertains to dealing with people on Capitol Hill. My God, I wouldn't even know how to put a staff together as of yet. We understand that part. But what I've tried to say to many people on many, many occasions is that I'm an American citizen. I'm a voter. And what has transpired throughout the years, as far as I'm concerned, has been reprehensible. I'm a believer that the American people have been played as suckers for decades, that we've allowed politicians to become career politicians, to sit up there and pad their own wallets and look out for their own self-interest, and it's been at the expense of the American people. My proof is the fact that we have a $37 trillion deficit. How is that possible? How could you possibly be doing your job and be $37 trillion in debt? How could you do that? It's really, certain things are just very, very simplistic to me. Of course, that's not the only problem that we have. But something needs to be said. And when I say what I said, people can dismiss it all they want to, because I have no desire to be a politician. I'm sincere with that. I just signed a multi-year contract extension with ESPN that will pay me exponentially more than being a politician would ever pay me. I don't need politics. But the fact is that our country is in a very, very bad spot. And when I'm perceived as somebody that is excoriating the left and favoring the right, those people don't know what they're talking about, but I understand where their animus towards me comes from.
Well, hold on a second. So his mindset to me is completely wrong, because what it sounds like he's saying is that if he needed politics to enrich himself, would be the reason that he would get into politics. But since he has other opportunities to make more money outside of politics, he's not going to go serve the people. See, me as a voter, I want a politician or somebody that's wanting to be president who's wanting to serve the people, just to serve the people, not because he can get rich or he can make more money than the place that he is currently at. Right. So his mindset alone to me is completely off if you're looking or wanting to be president or considering becoming president. So, yeah.
It comes from a place of me constantly pointing the finger at the Democratic Party, because the Republican Party, the GOP, as far as I was concerned, until the latest election, they had given up on the black community years ago. Let me reiterate, or remind you rather, what has transpired. Since 1964, when civil rights legislation came into effect, there was a president by the name of Lyndon B. Johnson who had succeeded President John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated in 1963. And even though you have both Republicans and Democrats in both houses of Congress pushing for civil rights legislation, there were adversaries to that. And Lyndon B. Johnson said, if we push this through, we will have the Negroes voting for us for the next 200 years. I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty close to that quote.
You're one of those Negroes.
Well, lo and behold, what has happened since then? The Democratic Party has spent the last 55 plus years receiving the black vote.
From you included.
So what did we do? We were transparent in our support for one party, giving them a license to take us for granted. And we alienated the other party, who naturally assumed they'd have no shot at getting our votes. And as a result, as a community, for the most part, we were disenfranchised, which speaks to some of the problems that we have had. I only bring that up to say It is legitimate when I look at the Democratic Party and I have an attitude because I'm looking at you and I'm saying, how the hell did you forget about us? The black community makes up nearly 14% of the population. The Hispanic community makes up nearly 20% of the population. The Consensus Bureau report shows that by the year 2030, the Hispanic populace in this country would exceed over 30% of the population. But we were talking about woke culture and cancel culture. We were talking about problems that really didn't address what really existed in our communities. We had a president in Barack Obama who quietly, adroitly, skillfully went about the business of patrolling our borders and making sure that immigration issues were addressed absent comprehensive immigration reform. What does Joe Biden do? He goes into office and he says, open the damn borders. And over 12 million undocumented immigrants crossed the borders.
You still supported him.
All contributing to our problems. Why shouldn't I have an attitude? Why shouldn't I look at that and say, it's a problem, you forgot about us? Why shouldn't I look at you and I heard you talk about, think about the sound bites we saw. And I'm going to get to the Republicans in a second because we all know Trump and his tariffs is a problem right now. But I'll get to that in a second. What do we see? We saw Biden in office. We saw him clearly debilitated. Every 80-plus-year-old is not as debilitated as he appeared, but he did appear that way. Yet we saw Democratic politicians standing on Capitol Hill chanting 4 more years. We now learned how we was religiously lied to about his state of mind and his capabilities. We saw Chuck Schumer lie to us. We saw a plethora of politicians on the left trying to defend and support him, only to throw him by the wayside after the debate on June 27th. And the very person in Kamala Harris, who I respect as our former vice president, became the Democratic nominee. All of a sudden, the same woman that couldn't make it to the Iowa caucuses in 2020 was a rock star. And if we didn't all buy in, we were misogynist. We were anti-women. We were racist. We were all, anything you could come up with. You heard it over and over and over again. That is where my disgust comes from when it comes to the left, when I say they forgot about us. They forgot about it's the economy, stupid. They forgot about if people have money in their pockets and they're living fruitful lives, that they have something to lose. And as a result, from a societal perspective, people will act better. Because if you have something to lose, guess what? You ain't trying to lose it. Why do I bring all of this up? Because all of this is the kind of stuff that made me say what I said yesterday at the National Association for Broadcasters Convention. Because enough's enough. I don't want to do this. My hope is that politicians who are centrist, who think about the economy, who think about being humane, who think about small businesses, who think about education, who think about our borders, who think about our national security, can coalesce with one another, engage in common sense thinking, and come to conclusions so somebody like me isn't necessary. You want to talk about Donald Trump and a potential third term where you want to circumvent the 22nd Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and Donald Trump ends up running for a third term? Stephen A. Smith will happily invite Barack Obama back into the mix. I think he'll beat Donald Trump. Yes, I said it. Because I think at his core, regardless of what people want to say about how he governed, I think he's a centrist individual. It's just that both sides were polar opposites against one another. I am not oblivious to the fact that since Obama was in office, there was a white backlash that took place. I am not oblivious to the fact that that made folks hunker down and be even more divided than ever before. I get it. I understand it. That black man in office spewing liberal policies, telling folks they got to get to the back because they lost the election, that this is our time, fall back, we running the show now, and the boldness and how emboldened he felt because he was the president of the United States, how much that turned folks off and made them more resolute in going against him. And as a result, we were even more divided as a nation than ever before. I get that. I remember the joke that Cat Williams once told. God damn, effing up the country is what it done. Goddamn entitlements. Go watch Cat Williams talking about how folks were feeling about Obama during his presidency, who weren't black. The flip side to it, however, is that it's not about black or white anymore. It's about America. Just like a rising tide lifts all boats, as a nation, we're only as strongest as our weakest link. And if you have the weak and the desolate amongst us and you're doing nothing for them and you're leaving them out to pasture, where does that leave us? See, when I think about the Republicans, I think the Republicans are asking us, particularly Trump, trust me. And by the way, he's in a position to do it because he won the popular vote. He won the electoral college vote. He won every swing state. He won both houses of Congress. He's got a majority 6-3 in the Supreme Court. I mean, damn. Americans didn't just give it to him. He took it because he recognized what the left wasn't doing. They were preoccupied with nonsense. You want to ask why Stephen A. Smith felt the need to speak up at the NAB conference? Let me ask y'all this question. We supposed to leave it to Bernie Sanders and AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? We supposed to leave it with individuals that will tell you that it's perfectly okay to tax 70% of your money? Not that they gave out that number. I'm just speculating because of how socialistic they are in their thinking. We supposed to say that's okay? Y'all okay with that? You okay with going to work and making $100 and walking home with 30? You sure about that? Are you cool with it? Just tell me. Because these are the kind of questions that we have to ask ourselves. That is why I spoke up. I am an independent. That's who I am. I'm not on either side. I'm not on both sides. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm creating my own lane. I have no desire to be on either side. Donald Trump has his acolytes. He has his surrogates. He has people in the bullpen. It could be a Marco Rubio. It could be a J.D. Vance. It could be somebody that we don't even know coming from the Republican Party. I sincerely doubt it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. I can tell you that much. But they got people on the right. That's why everybody talks about me on the left. It's not just because I voted Democrat and I voted for Kamala Harris. It's because that's the side I see myself on. But you're kind of wrong about that, too, because I don't. When I think about me, and I think about me running for president of the United States, let me re-emphasize that I am woefully unqualified. But a lot of people say so is he, and you put him in. A lot of people look at his cabinet members and the positions he has them in. They're there. Let me tell you something about Stephen A. Smith. Let me get this out of the way. Again, I would create a new lane. I'd be a centrist. Not quite like Clinton having to be dragged by Newt Gingrich to work with the right so you can ultimately leave office with a surplus. I would have done so voluntarily. I want to work with both sides of the aisle. I'd have Democrats and Republicans in my cabinet. They would be the ones butting heads and fighting, but their mandate would be to come to me with an idea that works for America. No one can have everything. In other words, I'm building a coalition. That's what I would want to do. Not just a stance. That wouldn't be me. One of my friends wrote notes for me and stuff like that because he was ironing out, man, if you were running for president, man, this is what you should be. Some things he said that were right, some things he said that were wrong. Because it's amazing, no matter how much I'm on television, no matter how much I'm in the public eye, people still don't know who the hell I am. So let me give you an idea of who that person is. It's about problem solving. It's about fixing the issues that really, really matter. It's about caring about all of America, not just a segment of our population. It's about all of those things. You know who I am, just like you know who Donald Trump is. That's the problem with the Democratic Party. You don't know who the hell they are, and you don't know who their leader, who can lead them. You don't have any clue. I think a guy like Wes Moore out of Maryland could do it. I think a guy like Josh Shapiro out of Pennsylvania could do it. But we all know they'll have their critics. From a national perspective, you talk about Westmore as a governor of Maryland, Josh Shapiro as a governor of Pennsylvania. Okay, those are localized individuals. Andrew Cuomo's trying to come back as mayor of New York. He was about to be a four-term governor in New York before his troubles invaded the proceedings and he was booted out of office. He had to resign from office, and now he's trying to make a comeback. Of course, there are individuals as professional politics who are far more qualified than me. But haven't y'all been paying attention? The American people clearly don't want politicians. They don't mind having a populist in the White House. They don't mind having somebody that they can lean towards and they can say, at least we know him. At least we trust that he's going to be who he is. You might not like Donald Trump with the tariffs. He told you he was going to do it. Some people might not like what Donald Trump is doing with the borders, but from a 95 percentile success rate, they say he's doing his job with the borders. Inflation is still an issue. A recession is in play, if not on its way. So certainly there are things that he hasn't done. But he's asking you to give him time because he's got to fight with these people. The war in Ukraine with Russia, we don't like the fact that it seems like he's siding with Russia. But what his people are saying is, wait a minute, do you want World War III? Bottom line, we're trying to stop all of this stuff. I look at Russia, I think they're trying to take control of Europe. I look at China, they're making footprints, they're gaining footprints in Africa and other places in the world. Why? Because they're looking for minerals. They want to make sure they take care of their own people. Amongst other things that they want to do. These people are not pro-America. They're anti-America. We understand they're the enemy. But what are we going to do about it? At some point in time, you got to ask yourself these questions. I don't want to come across as somebody who's trying to engage in some kind of war over identity politics. Maybe I have to monitor my tone. And that's fair. But when I think about me and what I want to do, I want you to know that I'm somebody who rejects party extremes. I'm not interested in that. I am a law and order dude. Make no mistake about that. You commit crimes, your ass gonna be in jail if I was in control. I will throw your ass in jail in a heartbeat. I don't like criminals. I don't like people who scared the public from living their normal lives. National security is a big deal with me. Trade, as opposed to trade wars, are a big deal to me. Immigration, I tell you this right now. See, crazy as it sounds. Outside of the criminals, because we don't need lawless. First of all, lawless Americans should be in jail, and lawless people who ain't Americans should be out of the country. Outside of them, guess what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen? I'm not throwing anybody out of the country. I'm not deporting anybody. You know what I'm doing? Outside of those criminals, I'm leaving others alone. But the border's shut down. Nobody comes in. Nobody. Until we get our house in order. For at least the first year. Shutting it down. Got a year, got to get our house in order. That's how I look at it. I'm saying all of this to say, while I'm no aficionado, I'm not completely lost and oblivious to the problems that are pervasive in our country. It matters to me. I want to make sure that it matters to you. And I want to make sure that you understand that in the process of us doing these things, we got to do better. We just have to. I'm thinking about some stuff that I wrote down. 4-tier flat tax with the top 1%. Making $200,000 or so. I'm looking at it from the standpoint that, why do I support a flat tax? I'm tired of you coming to me and one day it's 33, another way is 35, another way is 39% of my money that you could take as the federal government. Nah. Why can't you take 27%? Let's just throw that out. Workers 55 years and younger can diversify a percentage of their income from Social Security. One of my boys gave me that idea. I kind of like that. Kind of like that. How about Congress only being allowed to spend 30% of tax revenue? How about them being forced to sit in the nation's capital and actually work for the American people instead of themselves? I'm still baffled as to how you can be a congressional figure or a Senate figure and you may have entered the nation's capital with debt But now when you look at your financial portfolio, it might be worth millions. What's going on there? I don't understand that. And then I look at a $37 trillion debt. Am I supposed to believe that we're just spending willy-nilly on all of these things and no money is coming into your pockets as politicians? What's the number one reason I tell you, outside of being private and not wanting stress in my life, as to why I'm not interested in politics? It's because I'm getting paid. And what I'm getting paid, politics ain't going to pay me. That's my position. And then I look at some of these reports of what politicians are worth. I'm not going to mention any names, but we got politicians that were in debt, that were paying student loans. We got politicians that didn't have but so much money. Their net worth was in the thousands, and now it's millions? How? How? I'm just saying. By the way, one of my boys gave me this idea. Congress and Senate only in D.C. 2 weeks per quarter to vote. Reduce the cost. What the hell you living in D.C. for? For what? You ain't doing no work. Just a suggestion. All I'm saying is that as you look at these things and you look at me, I am very sincere when I tell you I have no desire to be a politician. I have no interest. But I have been asked by folks in the business world, folks in corporate America, folks on Capitol Hill, plus folks who are friends of mine, to strongly reconsider and to at least leave the door open to the possibilities, because you never know what state our country could be in the next 3 years or so. Stephen A., just don't shut the door. Just don't shut the door. Please, just don't shut the door. That's all I was saying yesterday. But what I want y'all to understand is that I had every right to say it. It was necessary because of everything going on. Not just in our nation's capital with this tariffs war, but also how helpless the Democratic side is to do anything about it. All they can do is complain for the moment. Nothing else. They don't have the seats. And we want to rave about Cory Booker, who we respect, speaking on the floor in the U.S. House for 25 hours plus. But what are we really empowered to do? The party isn't empowered. So it comes down to the people. And one of the people spoke up. That's all. Just want to let y'all know where I'm at. Not interested in running. Hope it doesn't come to that. But I was told I owe it to all of us to at least leave the door open. That's what I did.
Yeah, so we're going to stop it right there. Now, why do some people tell Stephen A. Smith to run for president? Well, that's because he can get attention. That's really it. The Democrats need as much attention on them as possible. But not only that, also grabbing somebody that can criticize the Democrats and the Republicans at the same time without coming off as being just a shield, right? Because he can pretend to be a centrist, or he can also pretend, or the Democrats could pretend that he's not being a hypocrite, right? If he was to criticize the Democrats, because the Democrats need somebody to criticize them right now that has, from somebody that has some type of credibility. That's not gonna, stand out and look like a hypocrite. But the funny part about it is that this guy is the biggest hypocrite, because he just stood there and tried to criticize Bernie Sanders and AOC and all of these Democrats for being socialist, but he voted for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was ranked one of the most far left Congress women in Congress. So if that's what you criticize Bernie and AOC for, but you went out and voted for Kamala Harris because you thought her policies were good, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're not a political aficionado or whatever he says, right? You're not, because you can't come out and say that you were in support of Kamala Harris and you voted for Kamala Harris and you wanted her to be president while also criticizing socialist policies. That absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know. I don't think this guy really understands what he's talking about. I'm not a political aficionado, and I completely understand that what you're saying right now is nonsensical. It's inconsistent as hell, right? Because you can't, once again, come out and say that you wanted Kamala Harris to be president and also criticize AOC and Bernie for being too far left and too socialist. It's just, it's silly. But the biggest criticism that I have for this guy is why, right? His motive for getting into politics. If you don't want to get into politics, why do you keep the door open? Right? If you don't want to get into politics because it's not going to pay you enough, why do you still consider the option of running for president? It doesn't make any sense, right? You're not being consistent, because in the beginning of this segment, you came out and said that you got a big contract. You got a huge contract where you can't consider going and doing anything else, right? Your political career won't pay you what this new contract is going to pay you. But your headline right here says, I will no longer close the door as a presidential candidate. Dude, what are you talking about? But what I want to know is, why did he vote for Kamala Harris, right? Because if you are so against getting taxed, because she was talking about capital gains tax and all types of taxes, taxing the rich and giving out money for homes, all types of socialist ideas. So why did you vote for Kamala Harris? Was it because you were scared of being called a misogynist, a racist, right? I don't understand. What made you vote for Kamala Harris if you didn't like her policies? Was it because of your Trump derangement, right? It doesn't make any sense. Were you scared of criticism? Were you scared of the mob coming after you and taking away your career because you voted for Donald Trump, right? That's what I believe. And if that is the case, then yeah, you're right. You're absolutely not fit to be president, because you can't handle criticism. Matter of fact, a few weeks ago, this guy got criticized by LeBron James. LeBron James came after him for talking about Bronny James. And when he was talking about Bronny, which is LeBron James' son, he was talking about Bronny's basketball skills and his game. He was just talking about, his performance, which is his job. That's Stephen A. Smith's job on ESPN, is to criticize athletes and their performance. So when he criticized Bronny and LeBron James came after him, this guy folded. He folded and he apologized. And I mean, it was the weakest thing that I have ever noticed. So if that's how you're going to act for doing your job as a sports analyst, which is something that doesn't matter, by the way, which has zero effect on your life whatsoever. If you can't handle somebody coming after you because you did your job, how are you going to handle being president, right? You're not going to be able to whatsoever. The criticisms that come at you in politics are a lot more fierce than they are in sports. And so if you can't handle the criticism on the sports world, you absolutely cannot handle being president. And it doesn't have anything to do with your qualifications, just the mere fact that you don't have the backbone, right? That's what I believe. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about this video. Let's talk about it in the comment section. Leave your opinions down below. And of course, if you are brand new, consider hitting subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.